Nature. The nature of a contract explains the basic characteristics of a contract under the Indian Contract Act, 1872. A contract is not just a simple promise, it has certain legal features that make it binding and enforceable. The main features showing the nature of a contract are as follows. Based on agreement. A contract is based on an agreement. This means that every contract starts with an agreement, and without an agreement, there can be no contract. An agreement is formed when one party makes an offer, proposal, and the other party accepts that offer. An agreement is mutual promises between the parties with the intention to create legal obligations. However, not every agreement becomes a contract. Only those agreements which are legally enforceable under the Indian Contract Act, 1872 become contracts. If A offers to sell his bicycle to B for 5,000 Indian rupees and B accepts the offer, an agreement is formed. When this agreement satisfies all legal requirements, it becomes a contract. Thus, the basis of a contract is an agreement consisting of offer and acceptance, which creates mutual obligations between the parties. There must be an offer by one party and acceptance by the other. Legally enforceable. A contract must be legally enforceable. This means that the agreement should be such that a court of law can enforce it if one party fails to perform his promise. Under the Indian Contract Act, 1872, only those agreements which create legal obligations are called contracts. If an agreement cannot be enforced by law, it does not amount to a contract. Social, moral, or domestic agreements are generally not legally enforceable, because the parties do not intend to create legal relations. Thus, legal enforceability is the most important feature of a contract. Without it, an agreement remains a mere promise and does not become a contract. Example: A promises to give B a gift on his birthday. This is a social promise and not enforceable by law. A agrees to sell his car to B for 300,000. This agreement creates legal obligations and can be enforced by a court. Creates legal rights and obligations. A contract creates legal rights and legal obligations between the parties. This means that each party gets certain rights and is also bound by certain duties, which are recognized and protected by law. When a valid contract is formed, one party has the right to demand performance, and the other party has the obligation to perform the promise. If any party fails to perform his duty, the aggrieved party can approach the court to enforce his right or claim compensation. Thus, a contract is not a mere promise, it is a legal relationship that creates enforceable rights and duties between the parties. Example: If A agrees to sell his house to B and B agrees to pay the price, A has a legal right to receive money, and B has a legal obligation to pay the money. Similarly, B has a legal right to receive the house, and A has a legal obligation to deliver it. Voluntary in nature. A contract is voluntary in nature, which means that it is entered into by the free will of the parties. No one can be forced to enter into a contract against his or her wish. Under the Indian Contract Act, 1872, consent is said to be free when it is not caused by coercion, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, mistake. If the consent of a party is obtained by any of these factors, the contract is not truly voluntary and may become voidable at the option of the aggrieved party. Thus, voluntariness is an essential feature of a contract. A contract made with free and genuine consent is valid and enforceable under law. Example: If A is forced by threat to sign an agreement with B, the agreement is not voluntary and A can avoid the contract. Lawful object and consideration. For a contract to be valid, its object, purpose, and consideration, something given in return, must be lawful. This is an essential requirement under the Indian Contract Act, 1872. Lawful object. The object of a contract means the purpose for which the agreement is made. The object must not be illegal, immoral, fraudulent, against public policy, expressly forbidden by law. If the object of the agreement is unlawful, the contract is void and unenforceable. Lawful consideration. Consideration means something in return for a promise. It may be money, goods, service, or a promise to do or not to do something. The consideration must also be lawful. If the consideration is illegal or immoral, the agreement becomes void. Thus, for a valid contract, both the object and consideration must be lawful. Any agreement based on an unlawful object or consideration has no legal effect. Example: if A agrees to pay B money to commit a crime, both the object and consideration are unlawful, and the agreement is void. Certainty and possibility of performance. For a contract to be valid, its terms must be certain and the performance must be possible. The Indian Contract Act, 1872 does not recognize vague or impossible agreements as valid contracts. Certainty. The terms of a contract must be clear, definite, and certain. If the terms are vague or ambiguous, the agreement cannot be enforced by law. Example: A agrees to sell a car to B without specifying which car. This agreement is uncertain and therefore void. Possibility of performance. The contract must be capable of being performed. An agreement to do an impossible act is void from the beginning. Example: an agreement to bring back a dead person to life is impossible and therefore void. Thus, a valid contract requires certainty in terms and possibility of performance. An uncertain or impossible agreement cannot create legal obligations and is not enforceable by law. Results in remedies on breach. A contract results in remedies on breach. This means that if one party fails to perform his promise, the other party has the right to seek legal remedies under the law. A breach of contract occurs when a party does not perform his contractual obligation or performs it improperly. When a contract is breached, the aggrieved party may claim the following remedies: damages, monetary compensation for the loss suffered. Specific performance, court orders the party to perform the contract. Injunction, court restrains a party from doing something. Rescission of contract, cancellation of the contract. Quantum meruit, payment for work already done. Example: if A agrees to sell goods to B but fails to deliver them, B can claim damages or other remedies provided by law. Thus, a contract is not an empty promise. It is legally binding and provides remedies when its terms are violated, ensuring justice to the aggrieved party. Conclusion. In conclusion, a contract under the Indian Contract Act, 1872 is a legally binding and enforceable agreement. It is based on mutual consent, lawful object and consideration, and clear and possible terms. A contract creates legal rights and obligations between the parties and is entered into voluntarily with free consent. If any party fails to perform his promise, the law provides effective remedies to protect the rights of the aggrieved party. Thus, the law of contract plays a vital role in maintaining certainty, fairness, and trust in personal and commercial transactions.